Hey people, what's up? Today we're going to be making some dark, beautiful, dreamy ambient similar to the style of Diedlonely and Oneheart. And we're going to be doing this all from scratch in the Ableton Live 12 beta. Super excited, let's go! Alright, here we are with a totally fresh project in Ableton Live. So first thing I want to do is grab this tempo and I'm going to drag it down to about like 94. And let's start with some dreamy pads, because that's really important if we're going to do ambient in that style, is just having some nice kind of dreamy background pads and ambience. So I'm going to start with, let's try Meld, which is Ableton Live 12's new synth. And I checked this out a little bit, and it has some really cool options here. So of course that's just a sine wave, that's not that exciting. Let's go ahead and check out, I really like this swarm. And this is honestly like amazing for ambient style music where you want things to gradually change over time. So basically what we can do is start with this general idea and then modulate things as we go to create this kind of evolving atmosphere. So let's just go ahead and start drawing in some chords, and then we can work more on the sound design. Okay, so I'm going to pick E major for today, and I have this set for an 8-bar loop, and each of these chords, I'm just going to do 2 chords for now and see where this goes. And I'm going to start with the 1 chord, so this E major 7 chord. And then if we're thinking ambient, we want to kind of think how this is going to smoothly transition to the next chord. We don't want it to be super jarring. We don't want it to be a lot of tension, just because we want it to be this very smooth background ambience. So I'm going to go ahead and let's try the G sharp minor chord, just because it shares all 3 of these notes in common. And let's see if we can maybe rearrange this a little bit so it's not exactly the same chord here. So let's maybe take this D sharp, and if you hold shift and either up or down, you can move that up and down an octave. So I think that's a pretty smooth transition. I'm going to go ahead and actually copy that B down here as well and do that. And maybe we'll have this G sharp down here too, just to kind of fatten these chords up a little bit. So let's go ahead and work on this sound design just a little bit. So the first thing I want to do here is work on this amplitude envelope, and I'm going to eventually use both of these, but for now let's turn that off. If you hit this little link button here, this means both of these oscillators will share the same envelope. So I'm going to do that. So any change I make here will affect the second one when we turn it on. So we're going to make this more like a pad. Drag the attack in, sustain, leave all the way, drag this release up a little bit. Let's check out our options here to modulate this. So modulating this is really, really beautiful. It's kind of fluttering in and out of this kind of dissonance. And this adds a really nice kind of upper layer here. So I know this has a matrix in it, and this is amazing. You can basically modulate anything from here with these LFOs and the envelopes. But the only thing that I don't like is that you can't see the modulation happening. And I know it's sound design and I shouldn't be super visual about it, but I don't like it. So I'll show you what I mean. So basically if I come into this matrix and let's say I want to assign LFO1 in here to the motion, I'm going to click on that and now it shows up here, and I'm just going to drag this up a little bit. And you can hear the change happening. But what I don't like is I can't actually see the movement it's making on here. So what I like to do is just go ahead and grab the LFO tool, and this offers me just a little bit more visual idea of what's happening. And this is just a preference for me. You can totally use the matrix in here, but I just like to do this. So I'm going to hit map, and I'm going to map this to the motion. And we're just going to dial this in so it's very, very subtle. And we're going to make this a long rate, so maybe over the course of 2 bars. And let's turn the depth down just a little bit. And then I also am going to map that to the spacing as well and give that a little bit of movement. So if you hit this little like hamburger thing over here, the lines, you have options to map multiple things to the same LFO. So I'm going to map the spacing as well. So let's drag this depth down even more. You know what, let's drag this rate up even farther, because we really want this to just be barely noticeable, very smooth transitions here between these. Okay, that already sounds super beautiful. Let's go ahead and turn this spread up, which is kind of going to detune and widen it a little bit. And let's go ahead and turn on the second oscillator. And let's see what sounds good here. I want something that has, it's just a little bit brighter. Let's take the filter down on that. Maybe something like that, just so we're getting a little bit brighter there. And let's go ahead and assign this to our LFO as well, just to give that a little bit of movement. Okay, so that's already sounding really beautiful. I'm gonna go ahead and grab a chorus as well and throw that on there just to widen it a little bit more. It's so nice. Turn the feedback up just a little bit. And lastly, I'm just adding Valhalla Supermassive on here just to make it super lush, super dreamy. This is a beautiful pad already. Okay, that is step one of our background ambient. Step two is going to be adding a vocal pad. And just like in the last video, I'm going to put this into a sampler and loop it. I am a huge fan of adding vocal pads to music like this that's supposed to be more ambient and organic. And it just adds a lot of extra texture, and it's just really, really beautiful if you can dial this in right. So I'm going to go ahead and again change this sustain mode to the looping option. I think this is a nice loop to have going on in the background. Okay, so let's tone this down a little bit and just make it a little bit more ambient. So I'm going to add a redux, and let's just take this rate down. And we really don't want that kind of chiptune type, so we're going to turn this filter on. So it's kind of a smooth cut there. Okay, so again, let's go ahead and add that Valhalla Supermassive to this as well. And if you're wondering, no, there's no reason I'm picking the Aquarius one. I'm an Aquarius, so we're going with it. And another cool thing to do with this as well, especially like in this ambient music where we kind of want organic movement and changes to happen, is to set the loop length to kind of modulate and change so it's not looping the same thing over and over the entire length of the track. So I'm going to go into the modulation options here. And for some reason, LFO 1 doesn't have very many options. You basically can only change these four things. So I'm going to come to LFO 2 and turn this on. And if you come down here to this A and B section, now you have basically, like, you can modulate everything in the sampler now. And yeah, so we can go ahead and I'm going to choose loop length for this one. And let's go ahead and change this to the random option. And let's change this to maybe be every bar or bar and a half. And let's put this all the way up to 100%. All right, cool. Let's go ahead and add a bass next. So let's go ahead and grab Wavetable and make a really simple kind of dark bass. So let's go ahead and do, let's take this down an octave. So we have a saw wave. Let's add a second saw wave. Detune it a little bit. And let's change this envelope so it's at full sustain here. Change it from poly to mono. Let's add some glide, maybe like 270. And if you want it to actually glide, you have to make sure these notes are overlapping. What I want to do is modulate this a little bit, so it's going to give it some movement. So if you haven't noticed, the trend here is to kind of just give everything a little bit of movement. Let's drop the amount down. We're going to attach that to this frequency here. Let's drop the rate as well because that's too fast. Okay, next I want to grab an auto filter for this. So let's turn this one into a notch filter. just to give it a little bit more movement as well. And I'm just going to modulate that with this LFO. So I'm going to turn this up. And again, I'm just going to leave this rate pretty slow. And then let's turn this second auto filter on. We're going to pull the cutoff back. Let's go ahead and add a chorus to this as well. Widen it just a little bit more. Turn it down a little bit. Something like that. And then again an EQ. So again, we're just keeping this really simple, and this is really just 3 elements, and it already sounds really, really beautiful together. So the next thing I want to think about is coming up with some sort of melodic element to put over the top of this. So in terms of the sound design, this is still a little rough. We need to dial this in. But in terms of the actual melody itself, I really like this. I tried doing some syncopation. So you can see here, a lot of these notes are starting on, the and of a note. So those eighth notes. And we're just kind of keeping it interesting and moving up and down. And this is a little busy. So what we're going to do is kind of, as we arrange this, build into this. So it's going to start much more minimal than this, and then it will grow into this as the track nears its end. Let's go ahead and make this more of a pluck. Go ahead and turn on some unison. And then another thing I want to do that can give this some movement as well is to modulate this wavetable shape as well. So I kind of wanted to go somewhere between a sine to a little above the triangle. So let's go ahead and grab LFO1 and assign that to this wavetable position, and not as fast. So let's turn that down. I also want re-trigger off because I just kind of want this free moving here. And since this is our main melody, I want to go ahead and add a little bit of saturation to this. Some compression, so let's add this just because I want to soften that attack just a little bit. And then I want to grab an echo, and this is where the magic happens. So what we're going to do, I'm going to leave it on 8th dotted, change it to ping pong, and let's come into the modulation. And what we can do here is this is actually going to modulate, so it will change the echo. So you'll hear if I turn this all the way up. Sounds a little crazy. But just a little bit can be nice, and just add this kind of organic feeling. And I just put the rate at 1, so it's just slower. And this is basically just going to give some nice movement. Let's grab a hybrid reverb and put it on the channel. I'm just going to turn this all the way to here. Just turn the decay up a little bit. So as minimal as this is with just these 4 tracks, I want to start arranging because the rest of what I'm going to add to this is going to kind of be dependent on the arrangement. So let me work on that. Okay, so after arranging this, you'll see not a lot has changed. So basically what I've done here is I've added just some ambience here. So some rain, that's the simplest thing. I also added some guitar parts here. Just really ambient sounding, and all I've done here was I am using the archetype Corey Wong, which is my favorite amp sim, and just added some EQ, compression. That Valhalla is super massive to this as well to really space it out. And then I'm boosting it, the highs on the sides just a little bit. And you'll see I have duck here, which is basically in place of a sidechain compressor. And I just have basically everything lightly ducked to the lead melody, just to help that lead melody pop through a little bit. And then the only other things that are different here, so we started with this melody, and you'll see here that what I did was I went through and just kind of zeroed out some notes in the beginning. And all you have to do to turn a note on and off is hit 0 on your number pad. So what I did was I just kind of went through and took out different notes. And as we get closer to the end of the track, we actually have all of the notes playing. I added a couple more, so it becomes a little bit busier toward the end of the track. And what I did also was I duplicated this MIDI track. And this is the exact same instrument, so that pluck that we made. The only thing that's different is I turned this echo up. And then, of course, there is some automation happening here as well. So we have, I think, the filter for this pad opening up throughout the entire track. I also added a grain delay, which is a really, really cool way to just add some nice top end. So you can see here, I actually have it automated. Let's see, to turn on about here. So we have this starting to come in. And you can hear that beautiful kind of shimmery top end coming in more and more as it progresses to the end of the track. And I think that is pretty much everything that went into this track. And as simple as it is, I think this turned out really, really beautiful. So just remember that in your next project. If you think you need to add 20 different tracks, you don't. Things can be simple and still be really, really beautiful. And I will see you in the next video. Take care.